past in various venues, as you'll recall. I strongly believe that a key to the reversibility that is built into defense strategy and a key to ensuring that our country is able to rapidly equip our soldiers in the event of future contingencies is our organic industrial base. I'm very pleased that Congressman Schilling and I were able to expand the ability of our arsenals to enter into public-private partnerships through last year's NDAA. And I believe that those partnerships, as does Congressman Schilling, will be key to maintaining the readiness for our arsenals. However, I also believe the Army must do its part, and I do believe that the Army must actively support the readiness of our organic industrial base. And specifically, my question then regarding this particular issue is, what is the Army's plan to workload the organic industrial base, including our organic manufacturing base through the arsenals, to ensure really that its capabilities are maintained in order to respond in case we do have another OCO at some point down the road? And if there is a plan, how will it be implemented to ensure that these critical capabilities are maintained?
Thank you for your concerns on a very important area. Generally, when people talk about so-called reversibility, I think they perhaps naturally think about reversing our end strength numbers. That's something we spent a lot of time on, and I think one of the more important components of the way in which the Army has shaped itself through this budget is we retain those NCO, senior NCO positions, and particularly field grade officers who would be so critical to expanding our numbers. But there's another component to that reversibility as well, as you noted, sir, and that is our ability to produce the products, the weapons, the platforms that are necessary to when we send our warfighters out to do the hard work of freedom. I mentioned earlier one of the critical components of how we're going forward right now are the various analyses that both the Department of Defense and the Army are conducting, sector-by-sector, tier-by-tier analysis through DOD, and an Army baseline industrial capability analysis, trying to both identify where our major risk lies, where the single point of failures exist, and also to try to establish a strategy where we can do as much as we possibly can, whether it's through PPPs, as Rock Island, I think, has done very, very effectively, or through increased FMS to keep those work lines busy and open. This is going to be a very difficult challenge. These are in large measure highly skilled workers, and that's certainly true at Rock Island. I've had the pleasure of visiting there. We have a similar hard metal facility at Watervliet and Albany, and those two do some pretty important things. So this is an ongoing effort, and we recognize it. And frankly, if all of our locations were as aggressive and forward-leaning as Rock Island has been to go out and to develop partnerships, we'd be a little less challenged. So I appreciate yours and Senator Durbin's and the entire delegation's vigilance on that matter.
Thank you. General?
If I could, Congressman, as you've stated, the organic industrial base is key to our ability to continue to be capable of not only reversibility but to sustain the force as we move forward. It has been for the last several years. What we've done is we've developed core functions at many of these areas which will enable us to sustain what we need, enabling these core functions. We will have to continue to assess as we look at our budgets in the future to see, do we have to redesignate some core functions or combine some, but I'm confident that we have a good program in place to take advantage of these core functions that we've established at many of these arsenals, depots, et cetera. As you know, there will be some reduced, for the next few years I think we'll sustain a fairly high rate, but as we move forward and we continue to finish the reset coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan, we'll have to start to reduce some of the capacity, but we will try to keep the expertise necessary to sustain these core functions that we'll need over the long haul.
And I think from a national security standpoint, I think we can all agree too that should we have another overseas contingency operation at some point, we don't want to be in a situation where it takes some time to ramp up the production of whatever it is that the arsenals or whatever are actually producing at that time, as was already mentioned, make sure that we do provide for our troops when they go overseas in whatever mission it may be that they're trying to perform. And I do have one question for the record I'd like to submit having to do with our reserve components as well, if I may do that as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. The vote has been called. I plan on trying to get in 2 more questioners before, and then we'll recess and come back as soon as we can. Mr. Loviando.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary General, thank you very much for being here and for your service. Mr. Secretary, I have a two-part